Witam tutaj Biś, to jest kolejny odcinek The Beginner's Guide. Nice room, not.
So first off, I'm sure you can deduce this, but this game is not connected to the internet. All of the notes that you're gonna see have been written by Coda. This was actually the first game of his that I ever played. This was shortly after I met him at a weekend game jam in Sacramento, where I grew up. I saw him working on this very level, and it was just so different from anything that anyone else was doing. So right away I was like, I have to be friends with this person. In retrospect, I think I was probably a bit too pushy, trying to get his attention. I was over-enthusiastic. But he was very gracious about it and very patient with me. And I cooled off eventually.
Nadzieję. How do you beat this game? No point to this. O cholera, dużo tych znaczników. Oh, holy shit. Can you guys hear me? Wee? Dupa, nie mogę wyskoczyć. No. Reasonable.
Oh, feel free to skip over any of these notes if they're not doing anything for you. Nothing extra is going to happen if you read all of them. Either way, to me they convey a sense of loneliness. I see this person who's filled with thoughts and feelings and beliefs and has no way to express them except as scattered and unheard voices in a game that wasn't meant to be played. But it's ironic, isn't it? That in playing this game and seeing how alone Coda often felt, that we get to know him better and actually kind of connect with him. And I have to be honest with you, this idea is really seductive to me. That I could just play someone's game and see the voices in their head and get to know them better and have to do less of the messy in-person socializing. I could just get to know you through your work. I think this is why I always liked Coda's games so much, is because it felt like they let me have that connection. I felt as though he was inviting me personally into his world. And then I feel less lonely too.
Huh. Holy shit. New room! Very good game. Mi się... Czekaj, co? Ciekaw jestem w sumie, czy ten ambient został dodany później, czy... Czy też było od razu? Yeah. Słyszę szepty. Tak sobie myślę, czy to jest naprawdę, że przeglądamy gry kolesia? Czy... Nie.
At the end of this level, we're going to see the puzzle again. And here, I'll tell you what I think the puzzle means. Each of these games represents an idea that was on Coda's mind at the time that he was making it. And the puzzle is a way of closing the door on a previous chapter of his life before moving on to the next one. In each of his games, after exploring a theme that, he might find difficult, Coda can then place this puzzle that he knows has a reliable solution he understands exactly how it works, and so it gives him a simple mechanism for moving on. And because there's this dark area between the doors, a space between spaces, before you move on, you get to pause. Just for a moment, a few seconds to reflect on and let go of the events that led you here. To step back and connect the pieces together. To grasp at that elusive bigger picture.
Huh. A tu jedna notka. How do you leave notes? Are you there? Koleś był samotny, nie ma co.
Okay, this one is tough. It's gonna kinda just spin its own wheels for a few minutes. Hang with it.
Zarobiście. Crouch. No widać, że to jest Source Engine, prawdę mówiąc. Wygląda jak Portal 1.
See, like, this is it. The whole game. And there's nothing that's particularly interesting about it. You just walk to the end of a hallway. Except, for some reason, Coda gets really fixated on this prison that has all of this modern furniture. And I don't know why, but he decides he needs to revisit this prison. He's gonna start over, use the same assets, turn it into something else. Okay, cool. Here's version 2.
A. Trochę tych mebli nie ma. O, nie jest lodówka. Whoa! Holy!
There's a bit more to this one, but still, it's not really communicating anything. It's kind of just weird for weirdness' sake.
Exactly.
So, okay, he throws it out and starts over. This time he comes at the prison idea from a different direction.
Show me. Hello, please walk forward. Na cholerę tam lampa jest. A.
And of course, now the table is gone and you can't begin the chain of events to escape. Here's a version where there are no bars, but you can't actually get to the well. And then a version where the inside of the prison is the outside and the outside is the inside.
What?
Let me just blink you real quick through a few more of these. I mean, he really unloaded on this prison idea. There's nearly a dozen of them. Personally, I think it's awful to watch this, to see a person basically unraveling through their work. And for what? Like, at what point do you just go, maybe there are game ideas other than this prison that I could be working on? But Coda doesn't have that voice telling you to stop, that particular mechanism of defense against yourself. Without it, you just spiral. And so he keeps going and going and going and going and going, and then he hits on something. And he likes it. And that's it. He's done. He stops making prisons. This is the very last version of the prison game that he created. And the reason I think it works is that the prison is not actually in it.
Eh? Ten facet jest dziwny. Ten ambient though. Hello? Who is this?
It's a conversation. And so this is what Coda wants, is to be able to talk to someone, to share what's on his mind, and to get some good advice from someone who knows. But the irony is that even in this scenario, you're still talking to yourself.
I know.
You know, all of these games so far are Coda talking to himself.
To jest smutne. Cholera.
I can see why he considers this a fitting conclusion to the prison games. After all of the obsession and frustration, just to be told by someone you can trust that things are going to be okay. Wouldn't that be nice?
No. Byłoby nice.
So what would it look like if Coda wanted to make a game about talking to someone other than himself? To me, this environment is meant to represent Coda's puzzle, with the two doors on either side and a dark transitional space between. You'll notice that the quality of the art is a step up from previous games, including this new and improved chat system, which he started using from this point on. From here on out, he begins putting much more effort into the visual polish of his work, and this particular game took 2 months to create as a result.
Milusio w sumie jest. Huh. No. Zarąbiście w sumie się w to gra.
After the intense set of prison games, this house cleaning level almost feels like cleansing. It's the moment after a particularly difficult or traumatic experience where you just need to let it sit and digest inside of you, and eventually cohere into something meaningful. I know that Coda really liked this game. Of all of his work, actually, this was the only one that he called me up to ask me to come over and look at it.
Oh.
This was during a period of a few months where he was like grossly happy all the time. Just walked around with a constant smile on his face.
Już nie patrzę na grę, tylko na napisy, nie?
I'm glad he made this. I'm glad he found some peace. But, of course, it can't last. The music stops, your companion is gone, it's time to leave. The door at the top of the hill is now open as well. Again, you can't stay in the dark space for too long. You just can't. You have to keep moving. It's how you stay alive.
Really? Nie widzę, żebym umierał, prawdę mówiąc.
Which is the whole point of the puzzle doors, right? That sooner or later you have to pick up and move. I really thought that was the point of it.
You thought? Huh. Items you lost.
This one gets a
only
bit
prices.
goofy.
Teraz bliżej siedzę.
About halfway through the game, the perspective shifts.
Whoa!
And you play as the teacher. And suddenly, you discover that your teacher is just as bigoted and afraid as you are. Oh, and also you can move around the classroom now.
O ja pierdolę.
I fell pretty hard for this one. I feel like it's one of the most relatable experiences that you can have.
Whoa.
To assume that some other person is perfect and totally fulfilled in every way and completely miss all of the little flaws that make them painfully human. I think about this game a lot these days.
Nie dziwne. Szczerze, nie dziwię się. To dobre było. O, znowu to.
This one took a lot longer than all the others for Coda to make. It was 4 months between this and the last one. That's twice as long as it took him to make any other game before this, and it's not like it's particularly complex, so I remember I found that a little strange at the time.
Wow. Jestem baletnicą, jestem... E. Ladarnia. O cholera.
The game ends with this eerie premonition of what's going to happen next in Coda's life. The solution to social anxiety, to fears of having to perform and having to chase success, the answer for Coda is to withdraw, to hide himself away. Which is what leads to scenarios like the stairs that slowed you down several games ago, where it just becomes harder and harder to access Coda's inner landscape because he keeps retreating. He just keeps backing away from possible connections to anyone other than himself. And to be honest, I didn't consider it very healthy when I first played this game. You know, it looked to me like he was trying to justify the idea of just disconnecting yourself from the world. And that wasn't what I wanted for him or for his games. Because I feel like a lot of his games are inviting me to connect with this person, to bring him closer. But what can you do? After this, Coda went off and took another 5 months to make a new game.
Mobius strip. Dobra, zamknę oczy, niech będzie. Mam zamknięte oczy. Ale mam oczy zamknięte.
You should probably open your eyes if you haven't already. It's pretty much impossible to solve otherwise. And there is a solution, by the way.
To raczej nie jest. Nie ogarniam. Co jest Whisper?
Like I said, I was getting concerned. First off, he's never been this explicit in his work about exactly what he's thinking. So where's that coming from? But then even weirder, his work has potentially stopped being an outlet for him. Not like he's having trouble iterating on ideas, but he literally just can't think of new ideas anymore. And in person, he was being a lot more distant than usual. Like, you know how sometimes a person will just deflect anything that you say in order to keep themselves disconnected all the time? It was that kind of thing. Here was the point in my relationship with Coda where I really started to wonder if he needed my help in some way.
O cholera, on gada sam. Przecież to jest samym...
His games are going to get more desperate from here on out. After this game, it's almost
We're going
6
to be okay.
months before he finishes something new.
Ja pierniczę, to brzmi tak, jakbym to ja robił. Ojej. Pokaż mi, jak ta historia się skończyła.
If the last game featured Coda talking explicitly about his creative frustrations, this one turns it up to 11. Now, put yourself in my shoes playing this. Here's a friend whose work is exhibiting signs of struggle, frustration, anxiety, depression, even. And yet, still, he keeps making games. He keeps throwing himself into the grinder even when he clearly doesn't have the energy for it anymore. Why? What is it for? Because from my perspective at the time and just what I knew of him, this was a result of how isolated he was. He was in his own little bubble, just sitting at his computer all day, not really showing these games to anyone, not releasing them onto the internet, and so he didn't have anyone outside of himself to connect with. He had no outlet to ground himself on. You can't talk yourself out of loneliness. It doesn't work that way. You can't be the one writing both the questions and the answers. Then there's no movement. Then there's no circulation. If all of your anxieties are being channeled into your work, then if the work ever fails, you have no backup and you're just going to crash.
I know.
seeing this game at the time that he made it, it looked really unhealthy to me. I was watching him do this to himself, and I hated it. I hated seeing him so trapped. It's like, video games are not worth this amount of suffering.
Indeed.
This is someone I really cared about. And I used to get so much joy out of seeing him create. For him to suddenly become angry and frustrated like this, it was the worst thing for me.
Szczerze mi się zbiera na wymioty.
I don't know. This is what I felt at the time. I don't know how else to explain it. I wanted it to stop more than anything. I had never felt so rotten. I needed more than I had ever needed anything for this to stop. But it didn't stop. After finishing this one, Coda takes another 7 months and comes up with a new game.
Of course, it didn't stop. Could be too easy. Though. The machine. O! Zakończymy se tu. Dzięki za oglądanie. Pamiętajcie, że jeśli coś się skończyło, to coś mogę znacznie i nareszcie. Kocham was. Bye!